You're watching CNN, and this is Connect the World with me, Lynda Kinkade. Welcome back. Negotiations are still ongoing, and the question remains, deal or no deal? There's still some optimism that Iran and world powers could reach a framework agreement on Tehran's nuclear program. Talks continue in Lucerne a day after a self-imposed deadline came and went. British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond says significant progress is being made, but there are some sticking points. Iran has always insisted its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, and a deal to curb it should mean relief from economic sanctions. The pace at which those sanctions will be lifted is believed to be one of the key issues causing disagreement. For more on this, I'm joined now by Reza Marashi. He's the research director at the National Iranian American Council, and he joins me now from just out near the talks in Lucerne. Now, firstly, the Supreme Leader of Iran said that no deal is better than a bad deal. With the talks extended, what's the feeling in Iran?
I think the feeling in Iran, at least from what I've been able to gather, is that talks are in fact making enough progress to warrant the continuation of negotiations, and that's why we've seen the deadline, the self-imposed American deadline, get pushed back once or twice. Negotiators have been really burning the midnight oil in an effort to reach this framework understanding that can serve as a bridge between the end of March and the end of June, when a comprehensive nuclear deal is hopefully going to be reached by both sides. That's their deadline.
The US, of course, does not want to extend these negotiations, even though that's what's happening. Can you tell us what are the things that Iran will not negotiate on? What are the key points?
Well, red lines become flexible lines. Otherwise, there's nothing to negotiate over. But I think the issues that Iran is driving a hard bargain on is twofold. One are UN Security Council resolutions. There have been 6 Security Council resolutions passed on Iran that put various kinds of sanctions on them. Iran wants all of those Security Council resolutions terminated. The second aspect is the research and development of the various technical aspects of Iran's nuclear program. Iran feels that under any deal that's signed, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, whatever it might be, they should be able to gradually progress how much research and development they do over the duration of the deal, while the P5+1 would like Iran's nuclear program to more or less remain frozen in time over the duration of a deal.
Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been one of the most outspoken critics of this deal. He's worried that Iran will wipe Israel off the map. He spoke earlier about what he thinks would make a good deal. Let's just take a listen to this.
A better deal would significantly roll back Iran's nuclear infrastructure. A better deal would link the eventual lifting of the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program to a change in Iran's behavior. Iran must stop its aggression in the region, stop its terrorism throughout the world, and stop its threats to annihilate Israel. That should be non-negotiable, and that's the deal that the world powers must insist upon.
So, Reza, is Mr. Netanyahu suggesting anything new?
No, I think for the better part of 20 years, Mr. Netanyahu has been insisting upon terms that would at least somewhat resemble what he just outlined in the soundbite we heard. The reality of the situation, however, is that every single member of the P5+1 countries, the permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany, have very openly over the past few weeks called Prime Minister Netanyahu's expectations unreasonable. If those terms were attainable, America and its allies would seek to achieve those terms, but they haven't been attainable for quite some time. So it's very telling that the Israeli Prime Minister is pushing those kinds of terms, and I think it speaks volumes about the fact that he doesn't want a good deal. He doesn't want any deal at all.
Now, Iran has said that the US imposed and the UN sanctions are illegal under international law. If no deal goes through, is Iran worried about the fact they could face more sanctions, and what sort of impact are the current sanctions having?
Well, the sanctions question is a good one, and that's why both sides, the P5+1 and Iran, have lawyers here to try to parse through the various issues. Different legal interpretations can make the situation murky. But the reality of the situation here is that Iran is saying that if it takes irreversible steps that put limitations on its nuclear program, it wants the P5+1 countries to take irreversible steps as it pertains to sanctions relief. And because American sanctions cannot be terminated because Congress will not pass legislation to do so. That only leaves EU sanctions from the Europeans and UN Security Council resolution sanctions. And the P5+1 is reticent to give up the UN sanctions because they feel that it would be very hard to get a new UN Security Council resolution on Iran in the future.
We really appreciate your perspective today. Reza Marashi, thank you very much for joining us. And we continue our discussion of Iran's nuclear deal online at CNN.com. If a framework is agreed upon, how will it change conditions in the Middle East? We look at the possibilities for you in our 5 things you need to know about the talks. That's at CNN.com. Live from CNN Center, this is Connect the World. Coming up, another blunt warning on Iran from the Israeli Prime Minister, and his words being echoed by a VIP visiting from Washington. But first, we're getting comfortable in Rwanda on this week's African Startup.